Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to our session on academic writing and AI. I am your facilitator, Leroy Hill, and I am really honored to be with you today for this session. And I expect that this session is going to be interactive. Feel free to stop me as we go along, ask questions. Feel free to contribute. You may have an experience you want to contribute. We want to make this as participative as participatory as possible. Are you hearing me? Clearly, let me know if you're hearing me in the chat. Am I oh, great? You should be seeing. I've enabled captions, so you should be seeing the text on the screen. It doesn't always get it right, but at least we have caption enabled, and that is primarily in addition to our commitment to ensuring that what we do is accessible here at Settle. We subscribe to Universal Design for Learning, and we also ensure that we subscribe to our campus education philosophy. I will go straight to our campus education philosophy that encourages us to be inclusive. I am not going to give you the full spectrum or read what's on the screen. I will just ask one of my colleagues to put in the chat the actual interactive campus education philosophy tool that you can visit it, and you can look at those different things. So welcome to the session. All right. There are no breaks. Well, there are no emergencies. It's not a drill. So if something happens, like electric current goes, we will have to reschedule. And so we just letting you know that. Again, special good afternoon to all my colleagues. I want to recognize my staff members, my colleagues who are here. I have Dr. Juliet Jones, I have Dr. Paula Marcel, I have Mr. Mark Garcia, I have Mr. Randy Duku, and I also have Miss Kimberly Mitchell, who is here with us as well. So we have quite a bit of staff members, and I am encouraging you just for as an icebreaker. We're going to do a quick icebreaker. Welcome. I see my colleague from Caveville campus, Mr. Small. Welcome to the session. And I do want to ask my colleagues as a way to make it more meaningful to disable the waiting room. There's a way to disable the waiting room, but I can't multitask because I know these persons are still coming in, and that would kind of get them in quicker. Quickly, you can put so in the chat. On the screen, you have an idea of writing, and this is a writing metaphor. This is an icebreaker. And in the research, we see that there are different persons or different types of writers, or the process how persons write metaphor. We have the sculptor, who takes a slab of stone, or perhaps it could be a hedge, and then they sculpt their writing out of that, and something emerges. You have the gardener who likes to put in different things. You don't know how things will happen. You don't know what it's going to look like. And then you have the Lego. And you may have an additional metaphor. You may have additional metaphor that you want to share with us as in terms of how you see yourself as a metaphor. Which one of these three are you see yourself most? The key thing here is most. Of course, you may say you see yourself as all of these, but where do you see yourself, especially when it comes to academic writing? Which one of these do you embrace most? All right. So Chris is saying sculpture. Deborah is saying the Lego builder. Wow. Sandra is saying Lego builder. That's great. All right. The sculptor. Earl is saying sculptor, gardener. Anyone will say other. The gardener, Wendy Ann is saying Lego. So we do have different approaches to writing, and none of them are wrong. And so the approach here we want to ensure is that recognizing your style and being aware of it is an important thing. Now, in today's workshop, I'm really going to share some of the things that worked with me as an academic writer. It's not the uh, answer to everyone, but this is certainly something that I want to I want to share with you with that in mind. All right. Again, good afternoon, Alet. Again, I want to say thank you. Before we continue, I want to declare out of our interest of transparency that some slides in this presentation were AI powered. AI powered, generated in different ways, or perhaps an image. And so you will see an icon on my presentation where it is AI powered. You will see that. And so just be aware of that. I also have for you a guide. And so I invite you, you can take this guide. I'm asking my team if anyone can put that in the chat, that would be great. That link, the Google Doc, there's a Google Doc that you can follow along. Some of the things I'm going to focus on would require you to thank you for that, Mr. Duku. So Mr. Doku in the chat has placed the campus education philosophy. That's something that we have as part of our curriculum review system, and we embedded there. And thanks, Javid, for putting the Google Slides. All right, so I can move along. Yes, no, have you grabbed this? Have you sorted? Yes, no, move along, move along, move along. Yes, 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 yes. I'm hearing a yes, yes, move along. Yes, very good. So today what we want to do is really want to look at, and you notice that the topic, we flipped the topic. The initial topic we had and when we designed the workshop was AI and academic writing. Um, and in reflecting on what happened and the whole idea of trying to bring a clear idea of agency, I flipped the title and says academic writing and AI because we really want to send that message. And one of the key things we want to stress is that academic writing is a discursive social practice. It's a social practice. You may think of it as a product. If you think of it as a product, then you will let AI lead the way. If you think of it as a discursive social practice grounded on the thinking and theory of persons like Fairclough and Foucault, who really put the idea that we embody or writing is an embodied thing. And so when we move along, we're going to come to some of those things. And so we want to see AI as a tool and the various roles in which we can use AI. And although ethical usage is the last, I really want to stress that we want to start with that. We really want to put those as a key part to our session today. Before we start, I want to emphasize that this session focuses on generative AI. So even though you may see the word AI when we do speak, we are speaking of generative AI. So we do know that there's a wide spectrum. There are four major spectrums of AIs. And the newest type is agentic and how agentic is actually helping you. And perhaps we could have a session on that some other time. But certainly we do see this session as focusing on generative AI. All right. I want to also encourage you that in October of 2025, the UWI, and we're talking about the University of the West Indies, and that includes all of our sister campuses. We came together and we have a UWI AI policy framework. In the chat, have you seen the framework? Yes or no? Yes or no? In the chat quickly, have you accessed the framework? Have you seen the framework? Great, great. Yes, great. Right? And UWI's position in that framework is you use AI, but you use it responsibly. And it's supported. It's supported. And your role is to ensure that the courses that you teach have a clear AI policy and ensures that the assessment is valid. And what I mean by valid is that in the age of AI, are you still using the same assessments that you had 3, 4, 5 years ago? Now that AI and your students are using AI and you may have a particular class or course policy, How are you thinking of your rubrics? And so we'll come to that. We'll come to some of those strategies quickly. And so the AI policy, and I thank you, Javed, for posting it. If you can go there, that is we have a dedicated section on our website. It actually takes you to what we call the AI Policy Navigator. The Navigator is a tool that's there for you to use. When you go to that tool, you will see the option for training, and the training there is actually using some scenarios. So it's something that we are piloting. I don't know if it's going to break, if many of you are going to go there today, but if you can access it and give us some feedback, but certainly it's a tool that we created because we want to ensure that it's interactive and serves you from that way. All right, so from the UWI AI policy framework, we're dealing with writing. And so as a faculty member, it is your responsibility to set or establish clear AI policy use in your course, how students would use AI in writing, because this session, although is focused on academic writing, we do ensure sometimes I encourage our students to do academic writings. And so how we want to do that, decide if it's going to be permissive, moderate, or restrictive. We have those examples in the policy. Communicate those clearly with your students. Communicate those clearly with your students. And you want to model, you want to really model. So in cases where you do use AI in your teaching, you want to be transparent and let your students know that this is what the new practice is. That if I do use AI in some way, that I declare it and my students can see me modeling good ethical, social, responsible behavior. All right, and so we do expect our students as well to use AI ethically. All right, I know time is of the essence, so in the course space, you can certainly see those. One of the things that we expect, and we adopted, in fact, this morning, I attended the UNESCO method roadmap, and it reinforced the whole idea of the ethical implications of AI. And so, and it's clear that we still don't understand the sometimes how the algorithm works, and different AI chatbot, generative AI tools use you will test it, and you will test two different tools, and they'll give you sometimes similar, but we don't understand fully. And so you really want to ensure that you are using it from a clear standpoint. And so when you're using it, I think one of the clear things we want to ensure and reinforce is that you are the one in control. You similarly, I mean, you may have someone help you to create something, and you are the one who have to review it to ensure that it's accurate. And so this is one of the major part of the things that we want to reinforce and stress, is that you have the agency rest on you. It's not AI. And so we really want to see that. And we want to encourage those various guidance. Thank you for that, Javed. One of the things that we see, and the whole idea of copyright law and Trinidad and Tobago copyright law, similarly, like US, would pose a challenge because there's some content, and you say AI content, is it subjected to copyright? If computers or the AI is not human, that remains a very contested and sometimes difficult things. And so we're clear that seeing AI is not human, one of the things persons say, well, how can I cite something if it's not, it doesn't have, can it hold copyright? And so one of the things that persons say, okay, well, this is a great opportunity to say anything that is generated, I am going to release it as open source because we don't know where AI got it from. We have, and so we may want to take the novel idea of, releasing elements in the open, but there are persons who actually indicate that they would have used AI some way or another in the generation of their new tool. And likewise, I want to stress here that one of the key things here is I know some of us do research, is when we research, we have to be quite mindful, and the policy speaks to that in terms of adding your data. Be very, very mindful in terms of what data you enter into the AI tools. So you want to ensure that you remove all identifiable information, and you want to ensure that you follow all the procedures and policies, especially if your research actually lingers on any private entity or has any collaboration. You may want to think carefully how you go about using it, because it is very, very important for us to see that it's your responsibility to understand that this information is used in the training process, and therefore you may want to opt out. All right, you may want to opt out. How do you opt out? I know in some tools they actually have the option of using it incognito or using it in a private way, but nonetheless still ensure that you, and I do know that there are some tools out there that actually don't require you to have accounts. And so all of these things do come into question when it comes to that. I want to pause here. Let's pause here. Pause here for a little while. And we see that this is something, a research in 2023, right? And we certainly see that overwhelming have used AI for their coursework. Overwhelmingly, students have used AI. And so the question of whether or not should we ban it? That's the past stuff. I think what we are now doing is, and we recognize being here, that what we're now doing is ensuring that we know how to use it in a social, ethical, responsible way. I'm going to ask my team members to put this chart in thing, but one of the key things we've noticed is the way in which AI writes, and not everyone can detect it. And this research, for example, we see where, the vast majority of persons in that test, they were not able to identify that this particular item was, thank you, Mark, thank you, Javed, was actually, and so this is where the discussion I usually have with the idea of Trinity and the others. And I think our focus should be less on policing and more on giving our students the more developmental tools, and the research has shown that the declaration, the ethical declaration, is perhaps a very positive way to start. I know in our online course template, there is an option for you to ask the students to declare, actually, this is an honor code that we are living by. And I will perhaps share additional research, but this is certainly something that we can focus on. All right. I think one of the key things on page 6 in your guide, I know you would want to look at that, but the focus of the research is on academic writing, but guiding students in the responsible use of AI requires you to really rethink, focusing more on thinking skills, focusing more on the process, and even valuing thinking when you do your rubric. Your rubric, if you are saying that you're focusing on thinking and you want to ensure that you give them and show, you have to rethink how your all right, your rubric is designed. All right, so certainly you can find out more about that if you go on page 6, but certainly these are some of the strategies you can use. And I do know that when we continue the workshop, we will be looking at some additional ways. All right, so let's start. I want to reflect here. I really, really want to reflect, and I want your input. Can AI write? Can AI write? Anyone? Yes, 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 yes. Kellon,
Yes, it can write. I have students that are using good afternoon. This is Rhoda Barrow.
afternoon.
Yes, it can write. Students use prompts from their activities, whether it is their tutorial activities or their credit assignment activities, and they feed those prompts into the software, and the software creates and shapes their responses and assignments for them.
Okay, good. And thank you so much for that, Rhoda, if I could call you Rhoda. Um,
Of course you
this is,
can.
thank you, thank you. This is helpful because I think what we want to look at is the whole idea of what do we describe academic writing as? And if we describe academic in a particular way, we may want to reflect on whether or not AI can do that. Because academic writing, and for me, this is my personal journey with the whole process of academic writing. Academic writing is a discursive social practice of occupying a space. It's disciplinary in its focus in terms of developing an argument and so forth. So one insight that I've always kept resurfacing and really thinking of is it's really not a simple technical skill. It's if it's a social discursive practice where I, as the writer, embody and write with voice and context within a socio-cultural setting, we may want to question, can we ascribe that to AI and community membership? All right, how do we enter that conversation in outline that AI can actually write from that standpoint? So the question we keep returning to is not can AI write, is but rather whose voice, whose argument, whose scholarly identity is being constructed. Matthias, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Leroy. So I think, well, I guess I have to oppose a bit because I would say that AI cannot write, just as I can say that AI cannot think, because it's an artificial intelligence, and it's in a sense it mimics the human writing process, or no, it doesn't it mimics the output of the human writing process, but the process that generates that writing in AI is very different from the human writing process. They can generate
Oh,
similar outputs, but the processes are different. Thank you.
yeah. So thank you so much for that, Matthias. I really thank you for that. And that's the trend, that's the trajectory that we're taking for this workshop. Because academic writing excellence is grounded in clear thinking, disciplinary knowledge, and authentic voice. Authentic voice. That authentic voice is your voice who's writing. So when we do partner and use AI, we are using it technically. And we may, if our definitions of academic writing is one that is wider, we certainly would agree with Matthias. Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Come on. Yes or no in the chat. Yes. Anybody differs? Yes. We really want to come to that understanding before. Michelle, go ahead. Michelle, I see that your mic is on.
Okay, yes. I am thinking, okay, let's look at Meta AI on WhatsApp, okay? And if you say to Meta AI, you think a thought, you're writing something and you think a thought, but you know that what you have in your head is not quite the way you want to say it. And you say to Meta AI, academic expression 4, and they will give you a whole lot of options. And there you will see some things that will guide you that you can then put and frame into your own voice. But certainly it's a help in very much the same way I am thinking. If you read a textbook on academic writing, and you have examples from Google and whatever, this is how you can say, well, so isn't, how do you dismiss that on Meta AI, for example? Do you say it's not proper academic writing? Do you say it's not somebody who, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I have a running discourse with Meta AI. and I
Oh,
buff them and I come back and it's almost as if I'm talking to, somebody. But
yes.
how do you deal with that? Tell me.
How do you deal with that? Omar, you want to answer that question? I see your hand is up.
Don't answer the question. I just want to put something on the table in relation to how the vendors articulate, they go about detecting whether AI has produced something or not. When you look at when you take our thought and our conversation and you break it down into very small units of thought, very similar to how they break an entire essay down into groupings of words. When you look at artificial intelligence, you ask a question and it is able to connect very similar groupings of thought. When you engage it, it feels like, wait, this is really like answering my question or giving me really good feedback. But if it gets much better at grouping those very small units of thought, then you ask it, and you could ask it any question. And like the original analogy you put on the table in terms of how, well, it was the third one was a builder, where you can, right. So if you look at AI that way, and it's getting better at grouping those small units of thought, then when you ask any question, it's going to isolate that unit of thought and begin to get much better at putting together logical sequences that would reflect similar to how we might think or how you would expect an expert in the area to put together those units of thought. So just want to put that on the table.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Omar. And Michelle, what we're doing here is, I think,
Yeah.
we are seeing that AI is certainly a companion in terms of Chappell's role of how we can see AI as various roles. But as a thinking partner, as a Socratic agent, as a debater, as a confirmer, it will create text based on what you've instructed it to do. But the instruction comes from you. The sort of lived experience you want it to follow or mimic comes from you. And so this is why we want to be clear that we're saying AI is a tool.
A tool.
All right? A tool.
And really not the crutch. Because
it's not the crutch.
And I say to my students, you have to think the thought first. You can't just push something on air and say, do this for me. No, you have to think the thought. You have to be in control and then control the AI, that tool you're using.
Leroy?
So Javed is, yes, go ahead, Rhonda. And I'll go ahead and read what Javed is saying as well. Go ahead.
Sure. I wanted to add this to the conversation so that, you can incorporate it in how you're responding to us. When I give students instructions for their activities, they're using my information to serve as the prompts that they're feeding into the tool, right? The tool or the crutch, whichever one we want to think of it as. So they basically using, I guess, the information, the intellectual property of the institution to feed it into the software. And then the responses that that will be coming back to them will be responses that the software, the learning system would have taken from all over the place, wherever it is getting its information from to be able to learn, right? In quotation marks. So when you're looking at all of those things feeding into the software and becoming part of the output, what belongs to whom?
So you know what, Rhonda, you actually brought in something there. You brought in something there that is key part of the whole process of the definition of academic writing as a discursive social practice. I'm going to remain on that. I mean, there are different definitions, but if we stick to that, then we see therefore the whole idea of ethics and citing and acknowledging and so forth. And if we are saying that this is academic writing, and we do know AI can cite, and sometimes it hallucinates and it can actually pull references and peer-reviewed references, it can do that. But I want to align my thinking that if it's we certainly don't want to give it those human traits of being able to have that authentic voice We are seeing more or less is blurring, but let's think of it in this case for our session today that AI is a tool and a companion, not moving the agency from you. I really want you to be that person in the driving seat. And so if we change the definition, then AI obviously will take a different role. All right, let's continue. And I do note that Javed did put something in the chat as well, talking about train. I guess if you write in 5 easy steps in terms of excellent writing and so forth. All right, so let's do this quick activity. It's a reflection. It's a quick reflection. And it's a reflection to guide us to the next stage or the next sequence of presentations here. All right, what stage of the writing? What stage of the writing do you find most challenges? Where do you normally get stuck? And what tools and strategies help? I'm going to call, I know some persons use some strategies. Think outside AI. I want you for now to think outside AI. You go through writer's block, you go through what are some of the most challenging parts. You can put it in the chat. You can hold the mic, you can pass the mic around. Where do you normally get stuck? And what strategies and tools do you use most to actually get you out of that stage? Let's deliberate for 5 minutes on this. All right? Roger is saying methodology. I'm going to help individuals to go along quickly. So I'm going to go on to the next slide to really see which aspect for you is most challenging in terms of the writing journey. You notice I didn't say the literature review, initial literature review, methodology, filling in around the main points. Simone, I think you're seeing my slides. Filling in around the main points. What do you mean by that, Simone? Help me here.
Oh, all right. Well, as a scientist, we just do the main point. So we have an equation, we have the answer, right? And that's just, but then to write that in a paragraph form, that fluff is where I have a little issue, right? I can just get to the point and write the point, but now crafting it in a paragraph to make a certain amount of words, that's challenging.
Oh, Simone, I have something for you today.
Okay.
At least you get one thing away from today's session and how we could use that as a tool based on Kalmar and Thompson's thinking and approach. You would certainly. And so we are seeing many of you in different, and notice I'm not focusing on writing product. It's a journey. It's a process. And so it is clear that in all of this journey, all the way down to reflection, that we can use AI. We certainly can use AI, and AI is not the only thing we can use. There are different tools, there are different approaches that you can use to really help you along. And so Arlette is saying, as an interdisciplinary researcher, whether their theories I'm using have been used in complementary ways. So she's saying, are you saying, Arlette, that you have a challenge with that? Most likely. So persons are saying the drafting. Okay, let's do a quick survey. I'm going to do a quick Mentimeter survey. I'm going to do a quick Mentimeter survey. If you can visit mentimeter.com and you can type in, I really want to see that. So this is going to guide how I'm going to go through the entire session. I want to guide and see where most of us are in terms of the previous slides. Shelby is saying, pulling it all together. So are you able to access this? 13 has responded. 15 responded. All right. So I think in the chat, many of you confirmed this, but it's interesting. It's interesting to see that most of you, the drafting is perhaps an issue. The draft is perhaps an issue. And for some persons, that's what don't get past by. They don't get past that, the drafting. And they may have the research ideas, they may have the structuring and so forth, but they just can't get to write. And I think this is one of those things we see in here. So we have 45 of you responded, and we're seeing clear that the drafting. And so we want to focus on that a little bit in this session. I'll give more attention to that in this session. And what I want for us to do as we move along, is can we see, and this is based on Chappell's work and in terms of that conversation that happens in the whole generative AI usage. We see AI can converse with AI. We see human to human. We also see human to AI and so forth. Based on that, we can certainly agree and see that we ought to use AI intentionally. Intentionally, because you want to ensure that across the writing process that you can explore handles, you can use it. I know the drafting as a thinking partner or prose. Again, this is based on Chappell's conceptualization of the various roles in which you can ascribe to AI. And I think as a thinking partner, because the drafting part is perhaps a difficult part for persons. And I will tell you here from my own personal experience, when I write, I think. Is that the same for everyone? Also, writing forces me to think. And I want to go back and say I am one of those writers that would just babble and write and write and write, and then I will carve out the meaning from my and there are those who use the skeleton technique, going back to the metaphors, and then you build on those, or the gardener. All right. I would perhaps say that we want to use various strategies and tools that would help us in doing that. In all that we're doing, let's just be aware that even the editing and the mechanic stage, when you're using Grammarly, Grammarly is seen as an AI agent. It is an AI agent. It is an AI tool. And so it will be flagged. If you need to let your students know, especially in your policy, using Grammarly, for example, because Grammarly sometimes rephrases and so forth, and it will trigger an AI percentage for that standpoint. So you can encourage, whether or not you encourage, and the students may indicate, okay, yes, I did use Grammarly and I used it in a particular way. All right. Based on that diagram, can we see that AI is a social writer? I'm not going to go to that diagram right now, but I want to go to the session here. I think one, we're thinking in terms of the integration strategy. We want to, I think, number 4, verify the output against your experience or expertise. Document your AI use in an authentic way, and we can certainly see that coming very clear. All right. You may be asking, what are some of the tools that you can use in each of those writing processes or stage for learning? All right. And there are different tools you can use. There are so many different tools. Which of these tools do you use? In the chat, which of these tools do you use? Don't lie now.
No, I'm not going to lie. I can tell you openly, I am very anti-AI, so I use none of them. I would say the most amount of artificial intelligence that I would be using comes built in. So if there is predictive text and of course putting stuff into Google and asking it to search stuff for me. But outside of that, I avoid the tools as much as possible because I see the foolishness that's going on with my students with respect to their critical thinking skills.
My gosh, this is so true. Critical thinking skills, Rhoda. You are not alone. You are not alone. Samantha is saying she's right there with you.
And I want to make it clear that I am not an anti-technology person. I tend to adopt technology very quickly and try things out. But one of the things that I'm sure will eventually factor into this discussion here, because we keep talking about using it as a tool, using it as a tool, using it as a tool. It then comes down to individual decisions about whether it's going to be a tool for them or if it is going to be a crutch for them. And I can teach my students how to use something as a tool all day long, and they can then personally make the decision to have it function as a crutch for them. And I don't think that there is enough on the open market right now that makes it possible for me to be able to determine when it is a tool and versus when it is a crutch.
Okay.
And in the classroom, when you ask students now in my lectures and in my classrooms to think on their feet, to brainstorm without any support, brainstorm on their feet, they are not, their brain's not firing the same way. They consistently have to pick up something to be able to do a search and to put in a prompt and to ask it to tell them what to think and how to think. Pen and paper thinking, pen and paper brainstorming, that's not happening in the same way anymore. And I'm not blaming artificial intelligence and those learning management systems for it. I'm saying that their arrival and the availability of them in classroom settings has made things very difficult. And I'm going to give you one example, and then I'm gonna mute my mic and shut up for the rest of the session.
No,
during the 6-week semester that we do annually, right? What we like to refer to as the summer semester. I had a student who was consistently failing the final exam, which is an in-person exam, but doing brilliantly at the coursework, right? So when he's passing coursework, he getting late 30s, early 40s out of 50 marks in his coursework. But when it came to the final exam, he's consistently failing the final exam, making 20 marks out of 50. Eventually, I start asking him, well, tell me how you go about doing stuff for the coursework, because I'm not grasping why the final exam is such a challenge for you. He has access to the paid version of ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has been doing all of his assignments for him. He simply takes the prompts from the assignments that are given on a weekly basis, feeds it into the software, and it generates the activities that he had to bring to class on a weekly basis. Then for his credit assignments, he was doing the same thing, using the prompts from the assignment guidelines, feeding it into the software, and it was doing the assignments for him. So that's why he was consistently passing the coursework and failing the final exam, because when he got into the final exam, all of the skills that he ought to have been learning over a 12-week period, he didn't have those skills when he was down to pen and paper in a room.
Okay.
So Rhonda, I'm going to ask you, what discipline is it? Sociology?
This is academic.
Sciences?
This is academic writing, sir. These are the courses where we are teaching students how to go about writing essays and writing reports and doing reflective writing and critical writing. Basically, how to go about doing the sort of writing that is necessary at the tertiary level.
And the sort of thinking, the critical thinking that accompanies that is what you are,
Correct.
I would perhaps ask you, have you thought of giving some changed in the assessment in terms of the assignments as a way to discourage the use of AI in the way that he's doing it?
If they have to
and
do
make it clear
take-home
to them?
assignments, Leroy, if they've got to do take-home assignments, we have to give them the guidelines to be able to do the assignment, right? So if we're giving them guidelines and they're taking the guidelines and they have to do a take-home assignment, obviously they're going to use the what you calling them, tools. They're going to use the tools, and they're going to come back with those assessments. The only way we can actively get students to be using their brains as opposed to the tools is when they have in-person assessment or in our assessments that require that they have to think on their feet. And I'm telling you, because they have become so reliant on having to utilize, whether it's the device, whether it's the hardware or the software, thinking on their feet, brainstorming at short notice, giving them an assessment or an assignment to do within the classroom space. And bear in mind, Leroy, we are dealing with hundreds of students every semester.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
Well,
we're not dealing with small numbers. If we're dealing with small numbers, there are ways in which we could have we could have changed things up. But when you have a course that have over 600 students in it, you can't do in-class assessments for 600 students across the board like that. So for
Yeah,
all of your credit assignments.
and that's a challenge. That's certainly a constraint. But
Yes, and some students have the software on their devices in the classroom.
okay, but
And they have
Rhonda, the fact remains that you won't be able to stop them.
No,
All right?
and I don't want
And
I don't
you as
want
the
to
teacher,
stop them.
you as the teacher understand where they are, want them to be critical thinkers. Perhaps we can rethink how you're number one, saying how they can use AI. And if for example you give them a prompt in saying this is how I want you to use AI, or encourage you to be a brainstormer, because you recognize now they can brainstorm. Can it be a brainstorm? Because perhaps if you tell them come together as colleagues, as peers in the classroom, they can brainstorm. So this is what we're thinking. The dynamics are changing, and I do recognize that people have different perspectives and so forth, but we can always recognize that this is an opportunity, because I could tell you before the AI, we had internet and persons use internet to research and so forth. All right, Michelle, go ahead. I know you've been
And
wanting to
Dr.
talk.
Hill, and this is exactly what I was thinking. Two things. Before AI, there was cut and paste. The students were cutting and pasting. Okay? And so we had to find a way to deal with that. But I agree in part with Rhoda when she says we do not have enough information on the whole AI use and so on, so as to, adequately inform our students. How do we deal with it? And I hear you, yes, Dr. Hill, and I look forward to even more of these sessions where we can get some insight as to how we, treat with our students when we conduct our classes and so on.
Yeah, I would perhaps ask if we could look at page 6 of the guide. I didn't go into it in depth, but these are some of the strategies you begin to use, because you really want to focus on critical thinking. You want to focus less on the product, Rhoda, and more on the process. You want to give that added credibility on the process. I want to unlock Janique. You've been waiting for a long time. Janique, go ahead. You had your hand up. And then I
Hi,
do know Matthias also wanted to speak as well. I know you had your hand up and you put it down, but go ahead.
good afternoon, everyone. I coordinate the academic research program. So Rhoda and I work closely together. And as a unit, our current position is restrictive when it comes to AI. Dr. Hill, we do focus on and teach and re-emphasize the writing process across our courses, and remind and reiterate to our students that this is necessary for you to develop the skills required to function independently. What I came looking for today, and hopefully we will still find those ways, are how we can actively, because I'm understanding the atmosphere, the direction that UWI is taking, harmonize what seems to be a natural part of their lives with the required skills and capabilities of our students. Because we get the complaints from everyone else across the campus that the students don't seem to be able to think or write independently. And I am concerned from my position on the campus about UWI's policy, and yes, I have read it, and the perspective that we cannot take a position that is restrictive, for example, across a program. Because I would love, we're going to write about it, our feedback, etc., for you to take the position that when it comes to written assignments, that we do not allow the use of generative AI. Because, go on.
that is one of the strategies. Going back to some of the, things that we know, you mentioned. Sorry to cut you off. Continue.
No, go on. Yeah. So the idea of using AI for brainstorming, I find counterproductive. The application of AI for proofreading and editing, I find counterproductive, because what we have now are quote unquote professionals, graduates, who in regular correspondence are unable to write a sentence or to maintain mechanical and grammatic standards. And that's a problem. So I'm looking forward. I'm sitting quietly and I'm listening as Rhoda
Yes.
said. I'm going to pull back, but I'm looking for how we can, if it is possible, that's the hope I brought. Say to them, okay, we understand this is your world. We need you to do it. And if you're going to use it, this is how you can use it, but you are actively completing the tasks and that are required. All right, let's start.
And Janique, if you may, if this is what we are stressing, the whole idea of a human agency, and reinforcing that in your course policies, reinforcing that in your examples, and also really empowering your students. Okay, you've mentioned that you don't want to use the banning, but think about it. If you as a teacher recognize that the students have issues with critical thinking, is there a way I as a faculty can re-engineer my assessment or my assignments or my active class in a way to really force them? And I know that this was not the focus of the session, which is why I put in on page 6. You can go in detail in some of those strategies. The idea here for the session is looking at AI as in terms of as a tool for writing, and I'm looking at it as a tool in the sense that we may think of it as a crutch, but we could also see it as a partner. Omar, and then Vidya, and then we'll continue.
While one of our colleagues were talking, it reminded me of something, the calculator. There's an argument whenever technology comes up about the calculator. There was a time when we prohibited the use of calculators because we definitely wanted students to be able to calculate live on the spot. And then we moved to a place where then calculators were incorporated because of the complexity of the tasks that we were then asking students to be able to perform at the level. So then I was wondering if, in your opinion, if by encouraging the use of the AI, if we're kind of going along the same path, and it kind of sounds like we're encouraging faculty to incorporate the use of AI, but then also raise the level of the assignment that you're asking persons to produce. And it also made me ask the question when she highlighted the fact that the students have, for example, the phones in the class with the latest version of ChatGPT and the other AI systems in place. It just made me wonder if there's if phones are being banned like in the classroom space to prevent the immediate access to AI, and then also if there's a space where we could identify, those on the spot performance without the aid of AI will be required. So if you're in a hospital at present and you have to perform some immediate surgery, you may not have at present you may not have access to AI. So you will definitely be required to think and produce on the spot. But if it's a more of a relaxed environment where you have time to do research, then the use of the AI tools will be available. And that is almost even baked into what the new environment for the student might look like. So just putting those thoughts on there.
Yeah, I mean, Umar, it's not just the calculator. I mean, the internet. Those major disruptions really affected and impacted and invited us to really rethink the way we teach. And certainly this disruptor is perhaps a big one. And I do know persons, and which is why we stressed, I said I wasn't going to focus on this, but I wanted to really give some attention. And from page 6, you can look at that. Some of the ways we really want to ensure that critical thinking continues. A rubric that you had years ago, and if you're focusing on the end product, and you're not thinking of guiding students through the process, and you're not valuing the process as an important, and I do know classes are big and so forth, but we certainly can see the opportunities for us to use AI in helping students maintaining. I'll tell you this: a lot of students, the research is showing that students they innately said they don't want to cheat. But if these tools are there, you mentioned the cell phone. One of the biggest opportunities that we've lost is how do we teach the ethical and social responsible use of cell phones or even social media? And if we continue to ignore it, if we continue to not seeing it as a tool and teaching the social responsible, I think this is what we want to stress here. And it doesn't mean that you have to use the AI, but now you have to rethink your assessment because you know that they will be using AI. And so you want to really focus your assignment and your assessments and your whole process in something that it makes it more relevant in today's, because otherwise you will continue to get vexed that they will use AI. But how do you teach them? And I think this is where we want to go. Vidya, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Hill. First of all, I want to congratulate Rhonda, very passionate educator, and I think I can identify with her in terms of we want to get critical thinkers in UWI, and I think that is what a lot of us really want to do. But I want to affirm what you said, Dr. Hill, the fact that if we want to get critical thinkers, we need to get more formative assessments. That's what I tend to do. I'm more in a clinical scenario. So, to get them to the end product for 5th year for critical thinking, my students from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and before 5th year, my process, as you quite rightly said, that's what I tell the students. It's the process of education that's important, not the end result at the end of 2nd or 3rd or 5th, because your learning objective is going to vary at each stage in their development. And I think maybe I'm a little privileged in that I have a cohort that I can, look over them and oversee for a period of at least 4 to 5 years. So I can see that development. But as educators, I'm seeing and I'm hearing, I really commend you all in terms of the passionate behavior of students first, then then getting AI, etc. But I know there's a great problem with AI because we are facing it in our environment, and I've been there for almost 25 years. So going back to the phone story, I tend to not have any phones in my environment. I tell them to put it away. We're here to learn. And we have a sort of a smaller group so we can work with an interactive environment. But in so doing, one class last week, I said, take out your phone for a definition, use it as an aid. But because as you said, Dr. Hill, we can't run away with the problem that we have presently. But we need to get our Caribbean graduates to be critical thinkers on par with our international graduates. And I think that is the goal of everybody here. But how do we get these kids to be honorable and ethical? That is a challenge that I've had for a very long time. But I have a hidden curriculum because as educators, I'm sorry to say, we are preachers. So I do not, what do I say? I'm quite happy to be a preacher because if they're young, vulnerable students that are in front of us, we do need to preach. And some hear, some do not hear. But I think that's our responsibility of a Caribbean family, that we need to do. So the hidden curriculum constantly of what is right, what is wrong, when to do things, and when to use AI. Luckily for us, I am hoping they don't do as much, or maybe I'm ignorant because I do not use any AI, as Rhonda says. I totally ignorant, and I don't want to delve into it. So I'm here to learn a little from you, Dr. Hill. But I did have one incident last year in which we gave radiographs and they had to diagnose what exactly the patient had. And we had two young gentlemen actually plagiarizing their work, and probably they did use an AI, one of the AI generative programs, etc. But they weren't very smart because it was two identical answers, and that made us awake that yes, it's coming, it's there. And that's why the type of assessment is important, and you quite rightly said that. We have to change our assessments and vary our assessments to make sure that we have a robust summative assessment and graduates at the end. So it's important to several formative assessments, varied assessments, and also we need to preach.
Yeah. I in addition to preaching, Lydia, I think we ought to also walk the walk. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I want to say thanks to Javed. Javed has added how helping students critically in the age of AI. And if you follow the link, you would see that it corresponds well with the strategies provided on page 6 onward. And so it's saying the same. Javed, go ahead, and then we'll continue. I think what we'll do after Javed is take a short break. We need what we call a wellness break.
Okay, well, I just wanted to ask everyone if they could just hold on some of the questions, because Dr. Hill has a lot to cover and we've used a lot of the time already addressing concerns. I know it's not that we don't value them, we do, but at the same time, we don't want to lose some of the information Dr. Hill has prepared for us. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem, and they could go ahead and converse. That's part of the approach. So thanks, Javed. I know you know how many slides I have and so forth, so that's fine. But we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we want to go back because we did agree that drafting and I think it was Samantha who mentioned in terms of the fitting around. And so that's what we're doing. Academic writing and AI. We want to see how AI can be used as a tool. We do know that you have your personal challenges and philosophical approach, and this is quite accepted. And so we'll take a break. We'll take 10 minutes or 5 minutes. 10 or 5?
5, Dr.
5. 5 minutes. Okay, so we'll come back at 2:10 and hit on from there. All right. So we'll come back at 2:10. Let's take. All right. So how do we value the writing and the writer with the agency? We mentioned earlier clearly that I want to stress this, that we really want to define the guiding principles of academic writing and AI, that you are in the driver's seat. I noticed someone drew a reference on a manual car as an automatic car, and persons may argue, well, whether it's a manual automatic, once it gets me to the destination and gets me there safely. And so I really want for us to really think, and I know that we have had discussions in terms of whether or not, and it is fact, students are using the critical thinking skills, which is why instructional designers, why academic researchers are pushing the idea, let us rethink our approach. Let us rethink our approach. And in using that, the whole idea is really a focus on the process. But let's return to the focus of this session. It's really about the whole idea of academic writing, which is why I say I had to flip it. And I did mention from a personal reflective account, when I sit in front of a computer, or if I had a pen and a paper and I begin to write, it really forces me to think. So when we write, this is a person, I don't know if it's where everyone thinking is triggered, we write. And sometimes my thoughts may not necessarily be coherent, but it's a thought. And it happens to be a thought that happens because I am just fixated. I have the pen in my hand, I have perhaps in front of the computer, and so that whole process. And really what I want to go to as well is following on Fairclaw's three dimension of discussion, and this is adapted from Karma's standpoint of writing as a discursive social practice. And we see here that the tiny text, which we think of as a product, the process of actually getting there really requires you to really occupy a terrain. You are the human agent. You are the person who knows the process, and there are certain interpretations that happen. And Matthias, you said that earlier on in terms of thinking, the computer can't do that. You are the one who have to be the person thinking, and you can say, yes, you can give it can logically give you those things, but in terms of really giving that interpretation and production of interpretation, that is in layer 2, we have to think of that from you having the agent. In terms of the text analysis, we argued from beginning, which is fine. Can a computer write? It can provide text and so forth, but in this setting, in this definition, we will have to see that this sort of discursive practice is a human agent. It requires human agency. And you may want to follow Professor Pat Thompson's, and one of the things that we want to stress is that there are different tools, and certainly we can see how AI can be used as a tool in advancing those things. All right. So we see, for example, and these are 4 theories of writing. There are 4 theories of writing. We see that we have writing as a cognitive process, the sociocultural, the social cognitive, the ecological. And I know we may say, okay, fine, our writing can actually be a combination of all of these, but certainly when you're writing and when we are writing and we're using this as a toolkit, writing is seen as a mental process, then how do we encourage? I want to go back again and say, okay, how can we use AI, or when we use AI, what are we doing when it comes to these theoretical notions of writing? And it is clear that the human agent needs to remain in the driver's seat, whatever we do. There is also, I like Berger's toolkit, and it really aligns well with Chappell's conversations, and we may think of it as crazy, but when we write, it's a conversation with the reader, and it's imagine it as a listener who's there, who's present for, they're not there from previous writings, and so forth. When we write, we certainly want the listener to, you as the writer, you embodied the text, you embodied the whole process, but you're writing for an audience which not necessarily be the present. And so Berger's toolkit is one that a lot of persons have say, okay, when you're writing for different audiences, you're writing for a clear audience, and this is how it should be. These are the rules, these are the, and yeah. Another toolkit, and this is not necessarily based on AI, but I think, who was Samantha, was it? In the whole idea of writing skeletons. I don't know if any of you have used writing skeletons. Yes, no, yes, no. Writing skeletons. Have you used writing skeletons? Writing skeletons. Rachel, Ayana, Sandra, Deborah. Some may say writing skeletons, using writing skeletons could actually be a crouch. Yes. So I want to ask Renuka, Niala, or Paulette, why do you use writing skeletons?
Hi, good
Any one
afternoon,
of you.
everyone.
Afternoon.
Sorry, Dr. Hill. Yeah, for me, it's very simple. It helps me to structure my thoughts, and it helps me to organize my writing. And sometimes that skeleton is not rigid. I can move it around, I can shift it around, I can rework certain aspects of it, but it gives me a structure to start with and to really help to move the process along.
So that skeleton has helped you as an individual. You're professional, you can write, you can think, but it has helped you. All right, so we see that. Anyone else?
Hi, Dr.
Anyone
Hill.
else?
Hi, Dr. Hill. Can you hear me?
Hi, go ahead, Rachel.
Right. So, I use writing skeletons, but I fear that the way I understand writing skeletons to be is not what is actually here. So, what I would do is I would have like for example, let me use an assignment I did. We were supposed to discuss how a certain molecular technique worked. So what I did was I would find information, right? I would structure it, and then I would break it down to the actual point, and then rewrite my understanding of that point. Is that what
Okay.
writing skeleton is? I feel like
The idea about the writing skeleton, think of your student who's having problems of writing in abstract. They're having problems writing literature review. They're not using the language. They're not using the sort of academic language. And so what you do is that as a child, when we first learned to drive, not to drive, to ride our bikes, we had a little training wheels. The writing skeleton is like a training wheel opportunity to really help those persons who are not very strong in academic writing use the language and get an idea of how they can position themselves to be more authoritative in the field. So that certainly is a tool. That certainly is a tool. Watching my skeletal thoughts on the screen may help with structuring my thoughts. Okay, so you're saying that. So that's what it is, Amali. So it's really just using, for example, and here are some examples. I'm just going to give you some examples, and this is taken from Professor Thompson. And Professor Thompson is a world-renowned writer and helping persons write in terms of a coach. And we can see here it may be taken that the students might be reading and understand, but you notice here that this is just a skeleton which scaffolds the whole writing process for the students. So now that you see what this is, does this fit in line with what you're thinking? Who was the last person who spoke?
me.
Yes. So does this fit within your understanding of the previous definition you gave?
Yes, but I create this breakdown myself, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Because I'm talking about from the perspective of a student.
Right.
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 So as a student, I would create this skeleton myself and then fill in like my understanding.
Yes. Yes. And some persons use these tools because our students they need those skills. They do need those skills to how do I write and how do I write in a particular way. And so these in the handout you have the skeletons presented. I'm not going to go through all of them, but on the handout, I don't know if we can put the page number, but there are certainly different skeletons that you can use to really guide the process of writing. And there are examples that are AI generated. All right, so it's like taking a block of text and really showing students this is how you would write a particular way using certain tools. And I will say here, when I started as a writer, obviously I got mental block. I said, okay, this is how. Well, there's two ways. There's actually this way and actually reading various articles, reading various books, reading various things, actually trained my brain and trained myself to see some patterns in how persons write, and I try to mimic that. And this is just a personal approach. But I will tell you this, our students, if they are to be, in terms of writing, we may want to start with this. We may want to start with this. We may want to say, okay, fine, you may have challenges. These are some of the tools you can use, but over time you won't be using that. You certainly won't be using that as a tool. All right, and so this is where you can use for academic writing. If you want to use AI certainly can be used in that standpoint. One of the key things we recognize as individuals is the need to be able to give proper instructions. And as educators, we are very good at that. We communicate very good. And so one of the key things that if we really want to get the output and the less hallucinations is really the whole idea of creating an instruction, which is a prompt. And I will give you this one for example. You may be thinking that this is a quite extensive, but this is a prompt and it's on page, I can't remember what page of the guide, but this is a prompt that is adapted from Molac and Molac, husband and wife team in Penn State University. And this is one they use in terms of helping persons develop the whole aspect of understanding what a good prompt look like. And so you can see here the role, the context, the person is a coach, writing coach. The task, it says introducing yourself to the students. It's not giving the students, you see, it's giving proper instructions saying, okay, wait for the response, tell them. And so through this response, any student using this in the ChatGPT or whatever, it will perform that task and serve as a writing coach or as a guide, rather than saying, okay, a very short script, a very short prompt, please write this for me. So we do know, I think one of the key challenges is that we really want to encourage our students to use AI tools in a very clear and meaningful way. And how do they do that? How do they do that? That's important. And we would have seen examples. You have the context, you have the task, you have the instruction, and the clarify and then refine. You can actually ask it questions to refine or clarify. But what research have shown, and by the way, there are different levels and advanced type of prompting. We have, for example, one, the chain of command actually follows the clear idea that you don't want to give the prompt in full. You want it to do it piece by piece, so that way it hallucinates less. But using a good prompt is a good way of recognizing the need for us as educators. How do we go about designing a prompt? If I have an assignment, I want to use a case study, or I want students to really critically think, how do I go about doing that? The idea here is that you are the human agent. You are the one who will be guiding the students. And it can be as simple as guiding them through the whole process of writing skeleton. It could be using a scenario. And so this is where we really want to encourage persons to think about that before you leap to that. So tips, again, when you're thinking about your prompt, you want to be specific. Don't be vague. You want to be mindful of the instances that it can not remember that it is focusing on an inclusive or diverse setting. And so you may want to nuance that in your prompt. You really want to nuance that. So all the things that you would really want get out, and sometimes it's only after we do the first prompt, recognize that this is wrong. And so perhaps I didn't have my prompt in a particular way. And so I can certainly do that. What we're going to do, I think one of the best ways of learning is, Simio Papi said, is when the learner takes charge. So we're going to work in groups. We're going to work in groups. There will be 9 breakout rooms. I'm going to ask the person, at least one person, share their screen. You have these in from page 22 in the guidebook. There are various roles in which we want to look at. I'll come back to this, but research idea generator, you have different roles. you have personal tutor, you have critical reviewer, citation assistant, Socratic debater. So you have this different role, and our role is to really not let the AI do it. So your prompt that you are designing is to really ensure that the issues that we spoke about, the critical thinking, the decision or the onus remains on the students, on the user, and so forth. So we really want to look at it from that standpoint. All right, and Javed, thank you for posting that in the chat. And we certainly want to. So there'll be 9 groups, and you will only look at, and I've suggested some prompts in there that you can modify, you can adapt, you can adopt. But I'm asking to use this as a opportunity for you to learn from your peers and with each other and engage meaningfully in this activity. I see some persons dropped out the group work. All right, so what you will want to do first phase is look at your prompt that's been assigned to you. You have 10 minutes to look at it, what you want to modify, what you want to change. And then you want to really use 2 different generative AI tools to really test it. And then you take a step back and reflect and see key takeaways. You have 5 minutes for that. So you may have to do the kind of refining and so forth. Any questions? Any questions before we go? I'm going to ask you to take a picture of this. You could take a snapshot of this. In fact, I could maybe take this snapshot and put it in the chat so you can keep a copy of this. All right. How do I do that if I'm sharing?
So, Dr. Hill, is it
Yeah.
that you have 9 groups and you have 9
You have 9 groups.
type
You have 9
and
groups, yeah.
9 type of prompts or something like that here on the slide? Is it that each group would take, I see it numbered 1 to 9, and we have 1 to 9 group. Is it that group 1 will have to take research idea generator and
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so just confirming
Yes.
that. Okay.
Thanks for that confirmation, Javed.
Yeah.
So group 1 will take research idea generator. Group 2 will take grammar and organization critic. And they are on page 2022. So any questions before we open the rooms? Any questions? And this is where you reflect whether or not, hey, this doesn't make sense. I'm not going to use this. But we're looking at the whole idea of the research and academic writing process. And so certainly, how do we support our students in that regard? Adele, go ahead.
Thank you. Are you, excuse me, are you assigning the rules or rooms, or are we choosing a room? I missed that.
Okay, so the breakout rooms are going to open in a while, and you will be automatically assigned by the system. All right, so you should see the breakout rooms opening. There are 9 groups. We know it's going to be a bit large, but I'm asking the persons who are sharing to share their screens so your users can interactively be part of the activity. Let's be mindful of the time. So we said 10, 25, 5. So let's do this in 40 minutes. We end here at 3:30 today. All right. So I'm hoping if you could shorten this by 10 minutes, we can actually do this in 30 minutes. But I'm mindful that you will interact and engage with your peers from that standpoint. All right, the breakout rooms are open. Yes, no.
They will
breakout
be
room?
in 1 sec. We're just renaming all of the rooms to match the activity prep,
Okay.
activity setup, sorry.
Any questions?
Eric, something went down.
Vidya, go ahead.
Something went down.
Something went down? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so you should see your room. You should see. You should see the request. Great. So much for taking. Thank you for taking part in this activity. I want to just stress here that as facilitators, as teachers, one of the shift a number of university and faculty members are doing is having their own prompt library. And that prompt library encourages them to say, okay, I have this course. I want to encourage students to use AI in a particular way. These are the prompts in which they are allowed to use in order to allow that critical thinking, or that perhaps use it as a guide, or perhaps use it in a particular way, rather than they going to AI and saying, do it for me. Does that make sense? So by you creating the prompt and saying that these are the prompts you can use, obviously they can come to you during your office hours and you can be that person for them, but we do know the challenges and so forth. All right, so 1 minute. 1 minute per group. I know when I say 1 minute, you're going to go to 2. If I said 2, you're going to go to 3. So I will say 1 minute per group. You would have discussed your key takeaways, but in terms of group 1, the research idea generator, Deborah, Martha, Matthias, Michelle, what one thing, and I could also share with you, the rest of you can also really reflect together by posting this in the Padlet. I know the link for the Padlet, we'll put it in a while, but you can also share, because I know we won't be able to share everything, but we want the groups to share key takeaways from their session. All right. Deborah, Matthias, group 1, research idea generator, be truthful. All right.
Well, hi, good day, everyone. I don't know who was supposed to speak on behalf of us, but we had spent a lot of time trying to ascertain what to do as an activity, and I'm going to ask if the other members can jump in accordingly. But we did get a chance to test out and understand the whole tenet behind creating a useful prompt in the AI tool, because we were actually Shanice had Claude open and we were testing out and seeing how it can clarify or what it is, hone the actual content that it is outputting. So we were in that process of amending the prompt to see, well, how can we now create a prompt that to get what we want and the end from the AI. So that's what we were doing. So we were in that process and exploring and learning from others in terms of their experiences in using the tool. So I don't know if anyone has anything else to add.
I think, Deborah, you did great for the 1 minute.
Yes, Deborah, thank you.
I think you did great for the 1 minute.
Yes, she did.
Yes, my question for the group is, if you are the person and you have a class, do you think doing this and allowing now your student having something that they can use rather than they going to the internet and saying, do this for me, or yes, they can actually use that. You can put that as part of your prompt library as an individual. All right.
Can I jump in here, Dr.
Yes,
Hill?
go ahead. Go ahead, Martha.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
Jumping off from what Deborah said, Shanice did have her Claude open. And what we did, we had the opportunity to test 3 prompts. We were in the process of testing the 3rd prompt when the breakout room stopped us. But what it showed is having a comprehensive prompt with clear guidelines and constraints, it does produce a better output. So that was good. And that's what came out in our deliberations. And we spent a bit of time, as Deborah said, looking at the best way. What I think we needed to emphasize as well, and what you can emphasize, is the role taking of the prompt of the LLM in the prompt. What role do we want that LLM to perform? Is it a student? Is it an expert? Is it a lecturer? Whatever that role is, because we had that deliberation as to what role is the LLM going to take before we execute this prompt to ensure that the output we get is something that's valuable.
Yes, certainly correct. Certainly correct. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Research Generator Group, Group 1. Good point. Group 2, Grammar and Organization, Adrian, Benjamin, Beverly, Daniela, Deborah, Jaleesa. Group 2. Stephen?
Yes, sir. We have 2 candidates who will be sharing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
group 2, I didn't hear my
1
name,
minute.
so I
1
was a bit
minute. You only have 1
confused.
minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. Go ahead.
So group 2 was the prompt. I'm trying to pull up the a little guide. Yeah, so we had to do the grammar and organization critic. So we use Gemini. We introduce ourselves as a lecturer in chemical engineering and food science, and we actually we cut some abstract from a paper that we found on Google Scholar, an abstract of a paper in the area of cocoa fermentation, and we use the prompts that were provided on page 24 to sort of guide Gemini with what we wanted it to do. What came out of that it was impressive. I'll be honest. We did go through how Gemini critiqued the writing, and it wasn't gibberish. It actually gave tips on parts that could be improved, where words could probably be misinterpreted, and it also advised us on possibly revisiting the last sentence to make it more punchy as the end of an abstract, right? The temptation came when at the end of that, of the output, there was a part that asked if we wanted it to just rewrite the text for us. So we see the positives and negatives in this. Positives being that it can be a tool that can be like a sounding board, as one of the group members said, to kind of point out, critique where writing can be better. So for people who already write and already know how to structure their thoughts and how to structure an abstract, it can be useful. It can be like perhaps having a colleague look at it. But for a student that does not know what to do, the temptation is there to just have Gemini write it for you, right? Instead of taking the output from Gemini and actually sitting with your draft again and rewording it yourself. So after that, we discussed just some of our, I guess, philosophical views on AI, and there were positives and negatives. One group member spoke about how AI is fully integrated. I mean, it's on WhatsApp. We have to embrace that it's there, and that the science, there is a science behind prompts. So that's a whole evolving science by itself. Others shared the fears about maybe becoming obsolete with the use of AI. And for me personally, with the exercise that we had, there is still an approach that you use to craft an abstract. So I'm not too sure how intuitive some of these AI programs are, because there is still an approach, and I'm not necessarily looking for a punchy sentence to end with, you know. Sometimes in technical writing, you just want to get to the point and give some of your results. So I think that was, in summary, what we did. I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
Well, I want to move on because we have other groups.
Okay,
And
no problem.
I want to stress here that, I mean, this, if you use it in that way, you can see where if the student use Grammarly and Grammarly makes the change of the sentence and so forth. I think there might be some signposts in terms of why this wouldn't work and so forth, but this also provides an avenue for them. It's not just changing it, but why is this, you know, from that sense, and how you design it, it can design it from that standpoint. Citation, I'm not too sorry. Citation met. Citation. Any key reflection? You're not giving up any reflection there? Because I don't know if for citation, I don't know if any of you use. Go ahead, Judith. Go ahead.
Hi, there were two of us basically in the conversation, Shabana and myself, and we used ChatGPT to do a citation of a journal article, and the very simple instructions, and of course waited for other questions from ChatGPT asking for additional information, and having provided the additional information, it presented a citation that was satisfactory using Chicago Manual of Style. However, double checking, and I didn't mention this to Shabana because I didn't check it before, there are spelling errors for the names and so forth. So if the student isn't checking back these things, it's very easy to miss those things, those little details, the spelling errors. And also, because of my experience, I was able to ask the question about italicizing any aspect of the citation. And that was not in the presentation that it provided in the citation. So if a student isn't aware of the right questions to ask, that is something that could also be missed. But other than that, the work presented wasn't such a bad thing. The students, after getting that general output, could then go back and tweak for themselves if they know what they're looking for. But it's a good start. I mean, to be honest, you have to be fair. It's a good start for the students if they're doing the assignments and they have to do the citation. It's a good start.
Yeah, and I did share that we have Mendeley, we have EndNote, we have Zotero also do these things as well. And we may argue
Precisely.
that it's doing it for the students, but I think if you could have made it more critical and at a certain point will have the students as a quiz, perhaps, I don't know. That way they're learning. And then once you build mastery, then obviously you can say you're mastered, you could now use these tools from that standpoint.
Yeah.
So thank you, Judith. I appreciate that. Thank you from that. Socratic debater, I'd be interested to see how this group 1 minute. Earl, Francis,
Okay,
Grace.
hi, Grace here. Yeah, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. So first things first, we didn't know what a Socratic debater was. So of course we went to ChatGPT and Gemini, who gave us an explanation. And then from that, we use that to come up with a topic or a concept that we would like to have debated with our students. And we decided to choose a hot topic about the CARICOM and the zone of peace. So then we placed that prompt into into Copilot. And we fed it with questions and it gave us some answers. And then based on that, in the end, what we liked about Copilot was that with our line of questioning, it suggested additional questions that we could use to further the discussion. And in the end, we asked it to help us to create a prompt that we could give to our students to foster the debate.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So in terms of the critical element, what do you think?
I'll ask somebody else.
Critical element, did it do it for the person or was it engaging? I'd love to know that. Because I mean, if someone else was arguing and debating with the students, do you think that this is something that they learn from? Because we learn a lot from debates and asking questions and that kind of thing.
Well, I will ask one of my other colleagues to answer that part. What was their thought on the whole idea of using the Copilot?
Well, I can jump in. And somebody else can after me. I thought that it was useful from the point of view that it provided some facts in response to the questions, which you can then use to think further and decide whether you want to go further on that point armed with the facts. And then the other thing was the questions that it generated. follow-up question. So I think that it can be useful in that context, but of course you still want people to use those answers to think and maybe come up with even more granular arguments, you know.
So it
on
can
the same
encourage
topic.
critical thinking. It can.
I believe it can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Personal tutor, 1 minute, Kathy Ann, Michelle, Nyla, Paulette, Renuka, Roger, Samantha, Gail. Personal tutor, how did that go? We'll go on to critical reviewer.
Where's everybody?
Hi, Samantha.
Hi.
Key takeaway. What's your key takeaway in terms of reflective? Because you would have discussed in your group from that standpoint.
The key takeaway is that it would definitely motivate critical thinking, but it could also be used as, like I said earlier, it could be used as a crutch. But for the most part, with the prompts, I see the use of the prompts and creating a list of prompts as an educator. I think definitely it could be used. It could be done.
Okay. All right. So the idea here is that we can use the tool, AI as a tool. Literature review, critical reviewer. Thank you so much, Samantha. Research question generator. Go ahead, Alex.
So myself, Adele, and the two Adeles, we decided to, took us a little while. Java did help. We put it into Gemini AI, and there was some initial tweaking with the prompts, but once we got it in and we put in an abstract we took from Google Scholar, it did help us move with much detail, more detail than we thought an abstract would have reasonably generated. But we kept working on it, put in a paper, and it continued. We did find the accuracy declining as it went on. So it needed ground truthing as we went, and the prompt to give us citations, update the citations was evident as well, something that we needed to look at. The suggestion to copy the prompt, copy the results, because with time it might change, and date and time it. So just keep track of the results. I think anything that I missed, Adele and Adele?
No, that's 1 minute.
Okay,
That's
yes.
1 minute.
Yes.
We have to move on.
But just to add, Dr. Hill, we found that when we requested the critical review, it did provide us with a breakdown by teams, and that was very interesting, so that we could validate some of the authors that came into being.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, and did that take away from critical thinking, you think? How would you have changed the prompt to make it more critical? You could think about those ways, because we do know these are challenges we have. So certainly these are some opportunities for us to really create these prompts and provide them to our students, rather than they themselves go in and actually just getting an easy way out. So you can modify them. And again, I encourage everyone here to begin to think about building a prompt library for your course, because your students are using it, and this is how we can assist them to being responsible users. You might say, okay, fine, that's spoon feeding, but the critical engagement, many of them don't know how to use the AI tool, and so the easier thing for them to do would be to say, please do this for me, or those sort of things. All right. Research question, Jolie, Petal, Georgia, and then we have methodology. Any one of you can go in for 1 minute, because I know we're over time. We're 9 minutes over time.
I think research question, group members are staying a bit quiet, so I'll speak quite quickly for 1 minute. We took the suggestion from the workbook, the actual prompt for research question. We tweaked it to specify the subject area, an issue of interest, and the research level. And we applied that to ChatGPT and Gemini. We took a topic that none of us knew anything about because nobody wanted to suggest a topic I think that they knew about. So it was a really interesting experience. I think we were seeing it from the student side, where we were blown away by how much information both ChatGPT and Gemini provided. I would say that on the opposite end, if you're an expert in the area and you look at that output, it could be very useful to you. You could critically assess, the things that the information that is being provided. Whereas as a student, the same term that's been coming up in most of the presentations it's going to be a crutch. But we did see the value of the prompt library, because here it is that the workbook, you provided the prompt to us and all we needed to do was tweak it accordingly to make it happen. So that was very quickly what we did. I don't think we didn't get much time to do much discussion, but yeah.
Yeah. And thank you, Jolie. That was really helpful. The Moloch and Moloch prompt, they took a while to create that. It took quite a while, back and forth, and then they said, okay, you know what? We want our students to be able to do this, and this particular role as persons are saying, but how do I do it that it's not a crutch? And then I want to create this sort of critical thinking and so forth. All right. Any last? But I want to say thank you for taking the time out. I think the key takeaway here is that we as faculty, we cannot continue to teach the same way. We can't continue to rely on our same assessment or teaching practices. And I think one of the key things is let's think about how we can build those prompt libraries for our course and invite our students saying, yes, I know you're going to use AI, but if you're using AI, I want you to use AI as a debater, as a this, as that. And these are the prompts you can begin to use. If you use any other prompts, please let me know, share that with me, because one of the things is that you want to be as transparent should be, and I encourage them to share those. All right, I know we have any key takeaways. I know Mark will have the evaluation cost experience review survey in the chat. I want to thank you for taking the time out, and let's keep the conversation open. Our doors are always open. If any of you are using any prompts and want to create a library and share it, that works as well. What we're going to do is that we're going to continue curating the prompts that we're creating from here and sharing that as a resource that persons can continue to tweak and persons can continue to and modify to their own suit. All right. In the age of AM, yes, as a mentor. Yes. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Francis, can we please be sent the slide pack from the session? Yes, I will do that. In fact, it's actually hinted in the handout. And so there is a link to that. I'm gonna modify that because I made changes to the presentation up to an hour before. So I really didn't have the time to do that. Thank you so much. All right, we'll stop the recording.